In this crazy world. Welcome to another episode in the soft and system side to sales, where myself, my good friend Jason, we talk about all the different elements of the sales mechanism, not process, because there's many processes within sales, and then there's also considerations on the soft touch points and how you can bring buyers along a journey and an experience to get to sale. So today we're talking about all the different challenges that you need to navigate in a cutthroat environment. So see you all in a few minutes. So, Jason, good afternoon and good evening to you as well. How are you doing?
I'm good today. Yeah, tired but good. Full of energy, full of beans. Just been workshopping and coaching and all that fun stuff.
Brilliant.
So, how about yourself?
Brilliant, Jason. Living the dream, as we
Living
always
the
say.
dream.
Living the dream. And all great. Did a lovely run today. I know we were just talking about running and all the challenges that come with that.
Yeah.
And today we're talking about challenges, and we're talking about everybody. Before we start, Jason, I'd like to just set the tone again. And I've had recent conversations with people. People think sales is easy, right? It's anything but. I believe it's the hardest part of business, right?
Yep.
And because there's so much pressure on it, the business depends on new sales, repeat business, new business. There's so much relying on it, and so the influence of a sales team goes far beyond the sales element of the business, right? And especially in this world, the world is changing. The world has become very, very tight, and we're always hearing this, Jason, rising costs, right? Profit margins are squeezed, cost of business is getting higher.
It
So
is. Yeah.
everything is getting squeezed, right? And customers want more. And so we're going to talk about today about all the different elements of cutthroat marketplace. So what I'd like to do, Jason, with this session is let's just brainstorm some of
Yep.
the issues, the challenges that people are facing, and then maybe we'll talk about some of the ideas that we can navigate and we can overcome these challenges, right?
Mm.
So if I was to ask you, what would be your top three?
Oh God, there's so many different ones. Like I think you mentioned being in a competitive market. And it is a competitive market. Whatever vertical that you're in, there's someone else doing it already.
Hmm.
So, what can you do specifically to get that competitive edge and make yourself different or difference from anyone else? And I think that comes down, okay, that comes down with the company, yeah, but then that comes down with you. And some sales professionals are better than others, but what do they do specifically? I think they challenge the market, but they also make them stand out different. And I think that's part of your personal brand. But also, what do the top successful sellers do specifically that overcome challenges, overcome obstacles, overcome pricing, overcome all of these other value operations, but they do something slightly different to everyone else? So, number one, I think, is attitude. Really understanding people's attitude to working hard, working smart, working against the difference on how other people will work. So if they see a lot of people doing that or they're executing that, well, let me do that way instead. Let me see what works successfully for me so I can actually challenge the status quo and be more incredible than other people. So could be strategies for highlighting your value proposition and how you pitch that and pitch value with you and your clients. What does that mean to them specifically? I think value and your value proposition is absolutely key. Like within tough times and all tough times, there are people that just outshine anyone else and everyone else. So I'm always curious about myself. What can I do? Like we've both been through the 90s recession, which was to do with a crash. And I think that was more property orientated. The 2000 dot-com bubble burst, and then there was a financial crash. But even through all of these, people excel. And then other people fall on their faces. But there's people that just excel through all of them. So what are they doing specifically to hold strength and certainty in what they do? So lots of cracking the codes there. But really, I think that it's not a secret. And anyone that says there's a secret to sales, I think there's not. So all those books that are written about secrets, there's just a way of doing it, which is more successful than others.
Yeah, yeah. And there's a few things you touched on there, Jason, which I think they're worth digging deeper into, right? So when you talked about price, right? Price wars. There's price wars, Jason, right?
Yep.
Customers not only want more, they want it for less, right? And as I said, not just on the price, on the cost of business. But if you're dealing with supply chains, like we all know there's the cost of oil and gas at the moment, right? And then to the cost of oil and gas to service industry. So there's an extra cost accumulates and compounds every part of the supply chain and multiple parts of it. And then people want it cheaper, right? So you're the middle person or middle business getting squeezed all the time. I believe this has always been a challenge now, and I've done some interviews for my white paper, Jason. I've been asking leaders about like what their top 5 challenges are, and I'd mentioned about the rising cost of business. Some say it's a big challenge, others say, well, look, this is always a challenge, so guess what, suck it up, move forward with it. But as a salesperson, it doesn't help, right? You really have to think differently when you're selling. You cannot sell on price because there's price wars, right? So that's number one. One of the other things is all about really targeting your audiences, because there's going to be stiff competition. If people are price sensitive, that you will possibly really struggle in defining your niche in that marketplace if you don't want to play a price game, right? So always a competition. You have to keep an understanding on what everyone else is doing. So I do believe competition is a really strife one at the moment. And you look at the marketplaces, Jason, there's flooded services everywhere, right? And when people say this to me, well, why should I operate in this marketplace? And I said, well, there's always good room for good people in business in any marketplace, right? Even when times are tough. So there's some of the few things that I see, Jason. But what's your thoughts on the sort of intensity of competition and the price element of things?
I think there's always that. Like I said it in my initial thing, is about there always is price. There's always has that objection behind it, but it's how you deal with that.
Yeah.
But it's also the value. You can offset price with value and add in something else, which maybe doesn't cost that much, but maybe you can add that in as an extra value add that no one else is doing, and include that within and say, well, this is something that we could do and add a little bit more value to what you get in within the whole structure of your pitch that you're going to give to the client, assuming that they're going to buy from it. But you have to give that scarcity option there as well, just to make sure that it's done by a certain date, that it can be delivered by a certain date. So that is another value. And it's also your USP. What's unique to what you do? How do you make yourself an expert in the field that you do, that you can educate others, your clients, and impact them? We've suggested giving stuff away for free before, which is probably doesn't cost us much, but it might educate your client even more, so they can make a more of an informed decision that maybe no one else is doing, because
Mm,
maybe other people, or all they're doing is asking great questions. Brilliant, excellent, fantastic. But are they educating? Are they really going, well, from my experience of working in your vertical before, educate, this is what other people have found. And you can, the more you can educate them and find maybe their specific challenges based on historical data and historical testimonials from previous clients within that vertical. So as an example, if you're dealing in recruitment,
mm,
and you've been dealing in a specific recruitment in retail or tech, you know that industry really well. So you know the challenges and opportunities within that area to be better than others. But then it's all about the service that you deliver. The amount of times that I've seen in maybe recruitment that they overpromise and underdeliver, and then they get a bad name within the marketplace. And then people are going to go, well, it's normally 20% or 15% or whatever it might be, that the margins that they get. People are willing to pay for the service that they get if they get the best service out there in the industry. And that goes for both client and candidate, or whatever it might be. It's reciprocal, because that creates that long-term ripple
mm.
effect going forward. Practice what you preach, do what you say, and deliver with excellence. And I know we've spoken about delivering, but maybe deliver a little bit more, because your name can be really great within the marketplace, or because of the specific areas that you could be in, it could be broken very quickly in a heartbeat.
Mm. Yeah. So let's just itemize these things, Jason. There's a few things you mentioned there, right? You're talking about the building your brand, right?
Mm.
So you want to build the brand that everybody wants to deal with,
Yep.
right? So if we talk about how you overcome these challenges, right? It's about developing your brand image and presence
Yeah.
and what it stands for, right? So again, you have a choice. Do you want to be the McDonald's or the Ryanair of your industry, or do you want to be the Rolls Royce,
Yep.
right? So you have to choose where you want to fit before you build a strategy. So let's just focus to what we were just talking about there. You want to be the thought leaders, right?
Yep.
And whatever it is you do, right? So what are the things you need to do from like a brand identity perspective, your maintenance, and then the authority elements, right? So you really need to dig deep into those three areas to understand what your brand is today, do an analysis on that for good, bad, or indifferent. And then what are the things you can do to maintain, build a new image, maintain it, but then develop that level of authority where
Mm.
people are going to come to you. You're the go-to brand, and whatever it is you're going to solve, and then how can you do it so well that you're going to create ambassadors in your marketplace? And that could be your customers or the people who just love what you do and they don't need your services now, but they'll refer you because they see what you stand for, your
Mm.
values, your principles, everything about that. So I believe that's really, really important, Jason, right? Obviously, then understanding your competitive landscape. It's like people ask me, should I always do competitor analysis? It's a really good question. And there's no right answer to this. Depends on your marketplace. Sometimes you don't need to do competitive analysis, right? But
Mm.
if it's in a competitive cutthroat market, you need to, right? If that's where you exist, you need to, because you still need to understand, how do you stand out? How can you be different? What are the pain points other people are having with different brands in the marketplace, and how can you ensure you're not that brand,
Yeah.
right? So how do you stand out? The other thing, Jason, that's always really important for me, this is behind the scenes in sales, right? Like people always say, well, like we have to develop more profits, and then the sales team, we can't. Well, guess what? You can, Jason, right? You mentioned one strategy there. You can maybe charge a few percent more in price, but offer that few percent to the power, or multiply by 10 in value
Mm-hmm.
for very little cost from yourself, but it means everything to your customers, right? Or your audience, your marketplace, right? I believe that's very powerful. The other thing, Jason, you could do is, how can I get 5% more traction in my marketplace, right? So yeah, knock on doors, whatever way you generate leads,
Mm-hmm.
right? But then how can you reduce the cost of business and the cost of sales by another few percent, right? And if you do any sort of lean operational excellence stuff, you could get a lot more than just a few percent. I'd always target 10 to 15% in year one, easy, more, right? If you do all these different things, Jason, in unison, it's compounding, because it's say 3% on 3% on 3% on 3%, right? If you do that 5 times, that compounds to about 15%, Jason, right? So straight away, just making little tweaks in different areas of the business and your services, you can compound to a substantial improvement in serviceability to your clients, right?
Yeah.
Another area I like to talk about is, and you said this earlier on as well, about handling objections, right? How do you effectively handle objections? Because that can always open more doors that you thought were closed. And I know we've talked about this before. You've opened doors that were closed. I've done it too. So there is a possibility, but you have to try it. You don't leave it to chance. So guess what? You build your sales process and you build the handling objections. You have the happy path. And then when you don't have the happy path, the not so happy path, you have that handling objections to get it back to the happy path. So there's a number of things you can do there.
Yeah, people will object to a lot of things, and sometimes objections is a good thing because they're curious about your business. They're curious about certain elements of what you maybe haven't said so far. So once you answer them and maybe create a story or narrative behind that specific area, once you finish with the objections, ask them, is there anything else that we haven't covered yet? Or can we move forward? Because I want to make sure that we touch base. Like, if this is not right for your business, and do the negative thing, if it's not right for your business, that's fine. But we can move on. Is anything else that you might not be happy with this, or might not be happy with the service that we're delivering to you or delivered to you, or whatever it might be? So you have to cover all the bases, but you have to cover the negative sides of things as well, to make sure that they're all ironed out, and make sure that there's nothing else for any other objections that they might have built up. But you have to just cover all the bases and make sure that you're fluid with them. Hopefully your testimonials about your business and your testimonials about case studies and all of that. But you did mention something else when you were speaking. I think as a group and as a business, depending on how many employees that you have, it's good to do the price competitor analysis and find out where they are. But as a salesperson, individual salespeople, and then maybe ourselves as an individual contributors, as a solo entrepreneurs, we still have to do it for ourselves. So as a salesperson, an individual salesperson, I think that's a must in your personal brand, is to read up on the market and where the market actually is and where your competitors actually are and what they're doing. Okay, don't solely focus on them, but just understand and educate yourself on where they actually are, whether there's 2 or 3 nearest competitors to you that might do something similar to you. But as we always say, it might be a square peg in a round hole, because they might not be exactly the same as you, because of where you see yourself as your unique selling points to the marketplace. But you have to still educate yourself on a regular basis. And I think that's due to our own strategy. But that gives us our personal brand and keep on moving forward with how we view the marketplace and how we're seen in the marketplace, and how we're perceived in the marketplace.
Yeah, that's all about building market intelligence, the different levels of market intelligence. That could be the trading economy, your customers, their wants, your competitor analysis of what's happening globally, locally. There's so many different things, Jason, that you can do to stay ahead of the curve. And I believe if you do very, very specific and smart market intelligence, you can actually predict what's going to happen next within reason, right? And you can see the trends and patterns over months. So you should be in a great position to be very reactive, right? Other things I like to think about, Jason, right? I always talk about in this world and on a business level now, right? The two key principles of business now are protection and adaptation, right?
Mhm,
And I think that's even more important for sales, right? Because you want to protect your current customers, right?
mhm,
Protect them like a fort would protect everything and the people inside. You have to fence them. And you only do that, Jason, by offering them an amazing service, right? It's not just the price. And if you're very clever, very smart, and it's authentic, and you build these really strong relationships with your current
mhm.
set of customers, they won't even entertain the knocking the doors, right? You're playing in their playground so much that they're not even going to entertain. And then on the adaptation side is you need to understand this is where market intelligence feeds in. How do you adapt? How do you adapt to ever changing needs to your clients and be ahead of the curve?
Mhm.
Be one step ahead of the competition all the time. So those two principles for me, not just for business, for sales, protection and adaptation.
That's a good point, actually. And you keep having to drive forward within that. And something an interesting point about winning and still retaining clients and all of that, but keeping it's probably a point that maybe for another discussion about keeping our team motivated without burnout, which is another core area. But I don't think we're going to get there today. But that's another time that just keep them highly driven, highly motivated, and highly engaged at what they do and have that right attitude all the way
Mhm.
through. But I think that's down to the senior leaders. It's down to how they're motivated as well. And I know we covered that a little bit in the stage. So something that I always like to do is get those intrinsic motivators done right, helping people to get the right attitude within what they do, helping them to find out really clearly their drive and their purpose. Something that I'd love to install within salespeople. But at the end of it, if someone doesn't have that, either it's not the right match for them in that career. So I'm afraid sometimes there might be a fall off, which
Mhm.
is unfortunate. But if they're not right fit and they're not having the right attitude, they don't have the right mindset, and they don't have the curiosity to actually go out there and learn everything, and they expect everything to come through to them. And do know a few people that have been like that. They're order takers as opposed to being
Mhm.
proactively wanting to go out there, proactively wanting to learn, proactively feeding back from failure and going, well, I'm just going to have to drive ourselves forward. And
Yeah,
what do I need to do? So I know it branched out in a slightly different direction, but it's fundamentals behind that. It's everything's driven by our attitude to what we want to succeed and how we do that. And it's
yeah,
probably back to my original point when we started.
yeah. And it's all about really keeping updated with ever evolving needs and changes and iterate as fast as possible and be flexible and dynamic to all those changes, Jason. Like you cannot, I always say in business, and again, so relevant to sales too, there's no such thing as standing still anymore,
Yeah.
right? You're either moving forward or moving backwards. Because if you're standing still, you are moving backwards. You will be left behind. You
Mm.
have to keep moving forward, no matter how difficult and whatever you need to do. It's not just revolution; it's evolution now, Jason. Right? But you have to iterate, and you should be looking at your teams on a weekly, monthly, and quarterly basis at the different levels, helicopter down on the ground views, the cascade, and making sure everybody's evolving and changing with what the business, the teams, as you pointed out, and your customers' needs.
Yeah.
So, on that note, Jason, I think we're coming up on time, right? As we always do, we can talk so long on these subjects because
Yeah.
we could do whatever the thing, every point we sit there, we could spend a long time because we trained this to teams, Jason, right?
Yeah.
We spend detail on it. So, this is only really like touching the surface of everything. So, this is something we possibly can continue on,
I
right?
think so. Yeah,
And
definitely.
if I was to say one final
Mm.
comment, what would you say? I mean,
Um,
not 1.5, not 1.7, not 2, just one.
Oh God, I think having something unique, being unique within the marketplace. I'm going to keep it as that. Be your unique you.
Yeah. That's your USPs. Be you. Be authentically you. What I'm going to compliment to that is be the best friends to your customers.
Yep, there's probably a book in there as well.
I think so. And on that note, thanks everyone for listening, for tuning in. If you have any questions, please get in touch with myself or Jason. We'd be delighted to answer any questions you have. And in the meantime, we wish to see you again on another session and have a great day.